At 7:15 on the morning of October 14th, 1942, Lieutenant Karl Weber crouched in the ruins of a bombed-out factory on the edge of the cold air bit into his exposed face beneath the brim of his helmet. He breathed slowly, steadying his nerves, as his eyes scanned the shattered street below through the scope of his Mauser rifle. Gray smoke curled from distant fires, mingling with the frost-laden mist rising off the Volga River. The city was a graveyard of twisted steel and crumbling concrete. Karl was 28 years old, a seasoned sniper with the 6th Army. He had spent months stalking Soviet soldiers through Stalingrad's deadly maze of ruined buildings and shattered hopes. His record was impressive: dozens of confirmed kills, many of them enemy officers and sharpshooters. His skill and patience earned him respect among his comrades, but also a growing weariness. Each shot weighed heavily on him, a reminder that survival depended on silent death. The morning was unusually quiet, broken only by distant artillery and the faint footsteps of Soviet patrols. Karl's hands were steady on his rifle, his breath measured in the freezing air. He had fired from this position before, picking off advancing infantry who dared cross the open street. Today, he waited for a different target, one that would test him like never before. Behind him, fellow soldiers moved cautiously, their eyes alert for hidden threats. The Battle for Stalingrad had reached a brutal stalemate. Every building was a fortress, every window a death trap. And somewhere among the ruins, another sniper watched, a shadow matching Karl's own deadly precision, waiting for the perfect moment. As the sun struggled to break through the heavy clouds, Karl adjusted his position slightly, aware that this day would be unlike any before. The city held its breath, the endless duel between hunters inching closer to a deadly conclusion. Karl Weber was born in a small village in Bavaria in 1914. Before the war, he worked as a carpenter, a quiet man who preferred wood to weapons. When the war began, he was drafted into the Wehrmacht and quickly identified for his sharp eyesight and calm demeanor. His skill with a rifle led to sniper training, a role that suited his patience and solitary nature. Months in Stalingrad hardened him. The city was no longer a place on a map. It was a living nightmare of rubble and death. Karl learned to navigate its ruined streets like a ghost, hiding in shadows, blending with destruction. He became known for his ability to remain unseen, waiting hours, sometimes days, for a single shot. But the constant violence took its toll. Karl's letters home grew sparse, filled with vague reassurances and little detail. He rarely spoke of fear or doubt, but those who knew him sensed a growing weight inside. The lives he ended haunted him, and the faces of civilians caught in the crossfire blurred with enemy soldiers in his memory. Opposite Karl was a Soviet sniper named Mikhail Petrov, a man with equal skill and resolve. Both men operated in the same sector, aware of each other's presence but separated by a deadly game of cat and mouse. Mikhail was younger, fierce, and relentless, known among Soviet troops as a ghost who could disappear without a trace. Their silent duel defined the battle for this part of Stalingrad. Each kill was a message, each missed shot a warning. The city around them burned, but the two snipers were locked in a contest that was as much about survival as it was about skill. Karl's unit relied on his precision to hold lines and protect their flanks. His shots slowed Soviet advances, buying time for reinforcements, yet he knew that sooner or later, his opponent would force a reckoning. Despite the tension, Karl's moments of humanity surfaced in small acts. He shared rations with wounded comrades, offered quiet words of comfort, and once saved a trapped civilian from gunfire. But such moments were rare, swallowed by the relentless grind of war. As October days grew colder, the city's destruction deepened. Karl and Mikhail circled closer, their eyes searching for the moment that would end their duel, one way or another. The days following October 14th were a tense blur of anticipation and survival. Lieutenant Karl Weber moved carefully through the shattered landscape of Stalingrad, his senses sharpened by the unyielding presence of his unseen opponent. Every shadow held danger. Every sound could signal death. Karl's routine had become a relentless test of patience and will. He spent hours lying still in frozen trenches or behind broken walls, waiting for a glimpse of the Soviet sniper, Mikhail Petrov. The duel was no longer just a matter of skill, but of endurance and resolve. One cold morning, Karl spotted a flicker of movement, a flash of red fabric among the ruins. He raised his rifle slowly, heart pounding, and squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed sharply in the ruined city. For a moment, the streets fell silent, but when Karl scanned the area, there was no sign of Mikhail. The Soviet sniper had vanished again. The close encounter changed Karl. It reminded him how fragile life was beneath the relentless gunfire. He realized the enemy was not a distant figure, but a man with equal fears and hopes, fighting the same war to survive. Karl began to observe more closely not only his opponent, but also the civilians trapped in the city. He saw mothers shielding their children, men desperately trying to repair broken homes, and elderly residents huddled in basements. These faces softened to the edge of his resolve, introducing a quiet torment that war could not erase. One afternoon, Karl found a small girl crying near the ruins of a school. She had lost her family and was trembling with cold and fear. Without hesitation, Karl gave her his ration of bread and whispered words of comfort. The moment was brief, but it lingered in his memory, a fragile light in the darkness. The sniper's duel grew fiercer. Mikhail, too, had changed. Reports from Soviet troops spoke of a man who moved with ghost-like silence and unmatched precision, but who occasionally paused as if wrestling with unseen burdens. Both men were caught in a struggle not just for victory, but for their own souls. As winter deepened, Karl's position became more precarious. The city was shrinking under Soviet pressure, and survival was becoming a desperate gamble. Yet he refused to abandon his post. His determination was fueled by more than duty. It was a personal battle against the shadow that haunted him. The final phase of the duel approached. Karl knew that the next encounter could be the last, not only for him, but for Mikhail as well. There were two men linked by fate and war, each waiting for the other's mistake, each bearing the weight of countless lives lost. The transformation was complete. Karl Weber was no longer just a sniper. He was a man caught between hunter and hunted, between duty and conscience, between life and death. In the ruins of Stalingrad, he had met his match, and in doing so, discovered the true cost of war. By late October 1942, the battle for Stalingrad had reached a brutal impasse. Streets once bustling with life were now skeletal corridors of ruin. Lieutenant Karl Weber and his men were exhausted, supplies were scarce, and the relentless winter chilled bones and spirits alike. The constant threat of death was no longer abstracted, was immediate and personal. Karl's duel with Mikhail Petrov had evolved into something more than a fight for survival. It had become a desperate game of strategy, patience, and psychology. Both men knew the other was near, felt the tension of unseen eyes tracking every move. Neither could afford a mistake. Amid the chaos, Karl received orders from his superiors to abandon his sniper position and reinforce a critical defensive line farther west. The command was clear: hold the line at all costs. But abandoning his post meant leaving the sniper duel unresolved and potentially exposing his unit to greater danger. Karl faced an impossible choice: leave his position, obey orders, and risk his men as Lvzor and face near-certain death to complete the silent war he had waged for weeks. His sense of duty wrestled with the harsh reality of command. He devised a plan. Instead of retreating as ordered, Karl would use his knowledge of the city and the enemy sniper to hold the position longer, delaying Soviet advances. His hope was that by eliminating Mikhail, he could buy time for his comrades and perhaps shift the tide, however slightly. The plan was risky. He had no reinforcements, limited ammunition, and the enemy was as skilled as he was. It was a desperate gamble, one that defied military protocol but held the spark of hope amid despair. Karl prepared carefully. He mapped escape routes, concealed his position better than ever, and coordinated with fellow soldiers for support if needed. Every detail mattered. The lives of his men and perhaps many others depended on it. As night fell on October 28th, Karl settled into his sniper's nest, knowing that this would be the day the duel reached its deadly climax. The air was thick with tension as Karl scanned the ruins through his scope. Shadows danced in the flickering light of burning buildings, Every sound was amplified, the distant rumble of artillery, the soft footfalls of Soviet soldiers, even the whisper of the wind through broken walls. Hours passed with no sign of Mikhail. Karl's fingers tightened around the cold metal of his rifle, muscles tense but steady. He thought about the countless shots fired, the lives ended, and the fragile line between hunter and hunted. Suddenly, a movemental flash of gray near a collapsed stairwell. Karl's breath caught. His pulse quickened as he aligned his sights. Mikhail Petrov. The Soviet sniper paused, unaware of Karl's gaze fixed upon him. The moment stretched, fragile and eternal. Karl squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked sharply. Mikhail staggered but did not fall. Instead, he vanished into the shadows, disappearing like a ghost once more. The chase intensified. Karl followed, moving silently through the maze of ruins. The duel had shifted from distance to close quarters, a dangerous dance of skill and instinct. They exchanged shots and fleeting glimpses, each trying to outwit the other in a deadly game of patience and precision. The city around them bore witness to their struggles, silent and shattered. Achihuan Ponkar was nearly caught off guard when Mikhail appeared suddenly atop a rooftop, returning fire with deadly accuracy. A bullet whizzed past Karl's ear, embedding itself in the wooden beam behind him. He barely escaped injury. The fight wore on through day and night, the two men testing the limits of endurance. Karl's strength began to falter, but his will remained unbroken. In a final, desperate move, Karl laid a trap near the ruins of a factory. He feigned retreat, hoping to lure Mikhail into the open. The gamble paid off. As Mikhail crept closer, Karl waited, finger on the trigger. When the Soviet sniper appeared in his sights, Karl fired. This time, the shot hit true. Mikhail fell, disappearing beneath a pile of rubble. The duel was over. Karl did not celebrate. The victory was hollow, stained with the knowledge of a man who had just ended another Eslifa. Life is human and fragile as his own. After the fall of Mikhail Petrov, Lieutenant Karl Weber's world shifted into a grim reality. The sniper duel that had consumed weeks came to a quiet end, but the battle for Stalingrad raged on relentlessly. Karl's victory brought no glory, only exhaustion and a deepened sense of loss. Karl's role in the city's defense was noted by his commanders, but personal accounts remained scarce. The duel had been a secret struggle, a hidden thread in the vast tapestry of war. It symbolized the deadly precision and isolation that defined the urban conflict, where every building and street corner could mean life or death. The psychological toll of the battle weighed heavily on Karl. He grappled with the haunting image of his fallen adversary, a mirror of himself in many ways. Both men were caught in a brutal machine, pawns forced to kill or be killed. Historians later reflected on the nature of snipers in Stalingrad, highlighting how these solitary warriors shaped the fight's intensity. Their confrontations, like Karl and Mikhail's, were microcosms of the larger war. Brutal, personal, and tragic. The story of Karl Weber also reminds us of war's complexity beyond simple victory or defeat. It shows how individuals face impossible choices, navigating survival and conscience amid destruction. After the war, Karl Weber returned to Germany a changed man. He avoided public attention, rarely speaking of his time in Stalingrad. To friends and family, he was quiet and reserved, haunted by memories he could never fully escape. In later years, Karl shared fragments of his story with close confidants, emphasizing the futility and human cost of war. "We were not just enemies," he said. "We were men caught in a nightmare." His story became part of a hidden history, remembered by a few but unknown to many. It highlights how soldiers on both sides endured pain, fear, and loss beyond the battlefield's visible scars. Karl lived a life dedicated to peace, quietly opposing the violence he had once been part of. His legacy is not in medals or battles won, but in the silent struggle to hold on to humanity in the darkest times. He died in the late 1970s, leaving behind a legacy of courage mingled with sorrow, a testament to the cost of war on the human soul. This is a history of World War II. Whoever oppresses the innocent is an oppressor. Neither the earth belongs to this oppressor, nor does the sky belong to him. We stand, now and forever, with the oppressed. Audience questions. Number 1. What would it feel like to face your enemy, not just as a soldier, but as a fellow human being? Number 2. How far would you go to survive when every moment could be your last? Number 3. Could a single bullet change the fate of an entire battle and the lives of those involved? This is WW2 Files. See you in the next one.